Guys, I have terrible news. You may want to sit down for this. I am not in Lost Judgment. I know, it's a shock to me too. I was in Judgment as a generic thug, I was in Yakuza Like a Dragon as a random grunt, but after 50 hours of Lost Judgment, I was nowhere to be found in the game. Breaks my heart, man. I thought we had a good thing going. Alright, for real, I can't say it enough, the Yakuza series rules. I love the combat, the criminal underworld drama, the in-game arcade that's actually playable, and who could forget the... With the main series changing genres to a traditional turn-based RPG, the Judgment side games have been tasked with upholding the fisticuff stylings of classic Yakuza. But these are more than just the same old gameplay mechanics with a different set of faces. Lost Judgment aims to stay fresh with more additive systems and expanded functions, on top of Ryuga Gotoku Studio's signature storytelling talents. As a heads up, I try to keep my reviews as spoiler-free as reasonably possible. However, Lost Judgment covers the most recent events in the Yakuza chronology. Therefore, the game itself contains spoilers for the first Judgment and Yakuza Like a Dragon. If you'd like to avoid those spoilers, be sure to click away. In fact, you can click over to my previous reviews for either Judgment or Like a Dragon by opening the cards in the top right corner of the video. And while we wait, be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get updates whenever I publish new content. Okay, if you're still here, then let's talk Lost Judgment. This review is based on a physical retail release for the PlayStation 5. It's been 3 years since the events of the original Judgment, and 1 year since the conclusion of Like a Dragon. What begins as a simple fire accident evolves into a murder investigation stemming from bullying incidents past and present. Back at the helm is our lawyer-turned-private detective Takayuki Yagami, and along for the ride is Yagami's partner, ex-Tojo clan brute Masaharu Kaito. Our detectives are tasked with investigating Seiryō High School in the Isezaki Jincho district of Yokohama. Their investigations slowly reveal the unchecked criminality that extends far beyond school grounds. In a word, I thought the story was compelling. Lost Judgment still has a lot of what I enjoy about the Yakuza series, and I think it generally has a fine narrative. It's intriguing to see how the criminal element has changed and adapted since the end of Like a Dragon. Lost Judgment delivers a more apt depiction of the gang issues Japan has faced this past decade, and does a fantastic job following up and expanding on the narrative seeds first planted in Yakuza 6: The Song of Life. I have some problems with the finer details though. Lost Judgment's story is perfectly fine in real time, but if you stop to break down each plot point as it's unveiled, you'll notice more than a few leaps in logic. That's even accounting for the fact that Yakuza games don't exactly operate on real-world logic. While it might be permissible in Yakuza proper, it feels less appropriate in a detective game like Lost Judgment. Also, everything takes forever to get started. I appreciate the patience Lost Judgment exudes in setting up its story, but it was a good 5 or 6 chapters in before I finally saw an actual gang in-game. Once things got going though, I enjoyed the story well enough for what it was. It's not one of the better stories in the Yakuza universe, but that's less a knock on Lost Judgment specifically, and more a compliment to the rest of the series at large. I think we perhaps take it for granted nowadays, but Lost Judgment looks so great. The past few years have been kind to Yakuza, and Judgment by extension, and I'm enjoying it very much. With the move to PlayStation 5, the Dragon Engine's prevailing weaknesses may be a bit more noticeable, but I still catch myself watching and playing these games in awe. Bro, they got pores! That's fucking crazy! PS5 has 2 presentation modes: Prioritize Resolution, which runs at 4K 30, and Standard Mode, which runs at 1440p 60. Honestly, both are great. Previous Yakuza games ran at 30 frames per second and felt perfectly reasonable. The time I spent in Lost Judgment at 30 FPS felt familiar and enjoyable. Obviously, 60 FPS is notably more slick by comparison, and everything runs a lot smoother at twice the frame rate. But while I personally always opt for higher FPS when given the option, I think 4K 30 is still great here. Both modes have the occasional frame rate stutters, but these issues are mostly relegated to cutscenes. Not sure what that's about, could be a post-processing issue, but the frame drops are gone almost as soon as they crop up, so it's not really a problem. Let's do some comparisons, starting with Prioritize Resolution. This is the 4K 30 mode, and it looks fabulous. Nothing too much to say about it other than it looks and runs great. And here's Standard Mode, the 1440p 60 setting. Again, much smoother, and it still looks good. Lost Judgment really has fantastic visuals any which way. For reference, let's check out some past Yakuza games. The last 3 releases from the studio look about the same, so how about Yakuza 6 instead? I was really happy with Song of Life's graphics, but the in-engine visuals, while good, weren't the best even by 2016 standards. This came out in Japan the same year that Naughty Dog dropped Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, which looks much better. Bro, look at them take off their jackets. That shit is crazy. 6 still looks good though, and as the first game to utilize the Dragon engine, it laid a great foundation for the series' later success. And one more for the road, Yakuza 5, which used an older game engine. This is the PlayStation 4 remaster, and can you believe the PlayStation 3 version came out 9 years ago? For context, that's the same year as Mass Effect 3's initial release. This Mass Effect 3 footage is also from its remaster, Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Again, Yakuza 5 looks pretty good for its time, even if it's not leading the charge. So that makes the recent Dragon Engine games, including Lost Judgment, feel much more visually impressive by comparison, in my opinion. It just looks great in general. One thing I loved about the first Judgment was the music. It felt effortless in its combining of genres, perfectly evoking the spirit of mystery and detective media. I've easily listened to my favorite tracks dozens of times each. A lot of Lost Judgment songs return here in the sequel. But there are original tracks as well, and they fit right in. And like all Yakuza games nowadays, the voice acting is tremendous. The English and Japanese performances are equally fantastic, and I'm still so impressed at Ryuga Gotoku Studio's dedicated accuracy and localization. The scripts are tweaked for each language, conveying more accurate moment-to-moment dialogues while still progressing towards the same end goal.
So, Keiko-chan, this internet boy, how'd you end up on the raw end of a scam like this?
How is this spicing things up? Besides, we don't even know for sure if it was a scam yet, right?
Exactly. Kaito-san here is just jumping to conclusions. It'll be fine, Keiko-san. Don't worry. At Yagami Detective Agency, we make sure our clients' hearts are at the heart of our business.
That's so great to hear. I know I hired just the right people.
ケイコちゃんな、そんなんだからネットで会った男なんかに騙されんだぞ。
そんなの関係ないですよね。それにまだ本当に騙されたのかわかりません。
そうだよ。あんまいい加減なこと言わないの。大丈夫だよ、ケイコさん。うちはね、何よりも依頼人の心に寄り添う探偵事務所なんだから。
やっぱり私、八神さんに依頼できてよかったです。
I truly believe that the rest of the gaming industry needs to catch up to this level. It's almost unreal how much these small writing changes improve the overall quality. As previously mentioned, Lost Judgment follows the gameplay path established by Yakuza 0 through 6 and Judgment as an open-world action game. The Crane and Tiger stances from the first game return. Crane is better for dealing with crowds, Tiger is better for targeting a single enemy. Joining those is the Snake stance, which is better for throwing and disarming enemies. Every stance has its own EX action finishing moves, with Snake stance additionally including contextual, non-fatal EX surrender attacks. EX Boost makes its return and is mechanically the same. By pushing R2 while you have at least one EX bar filled, you can enter an enhanced mode with increased damage output. However, a lot of the periphery benefits of EX Boost, like knockback prevention, have been reworked into obtainable upgrades instead of being inherent by default. I really like the way the game is balanced and the stylistic variety of combat. I also think the Snake stance is great, and I found myself using it more often than not during my casual play sessions. Lost Judgment also doubles down on the supplemental mechanics. Lockpicking, chase missions, and optional dates are all back with relatively minor changes overall. If you get the DLC, there are 3 additional romance options. Active Search adds a few extra gadgets to the mix that offer different ways to observe your surroundings. Tailing missions are here again, for better or for worse, and you can now hide in plain sight by holding triangle. This helps if you don't have any nearby cover areas. Photo missions have more requirements, but include the super slow motion focus time skill for you to take accurate and precise photos of the incriminating scene. And certain dialogue trees adapt parts of Sakura War's lip system, such as requiring a determination of intensity. Joining those are a number of mechanics new to Lost Judgment. You get a skateboard early in the game, which is definitely a lot faster than just running everywhere on foot. Specific missions will require you to climb around the environment, allowing you entry to certain areas that are otherwise inaccessible. A number of missions are only traversable by stealth mechanics. These are pretty basic as far as stealth gameplay goes. You hide behind cover to avoid detection, you can examine points of interest while in cover to determine a path forward, some environmental objects make noise which attracts enemies, you can throw coins to draw enemy attention to a specific area, and sneaking up behind enemies allows you to choke them out, so long as they would be hostile otherwise. Non-hostile enemies like school security cannot be taken down and must be avoided. And you also get a crime-fighting dog! Of course, it wouldn't be a Yakuza game without side content. The big periphery activities in Lost Judgment are the school stories. Seidio High School is chock full of delinquent kids and related issues, and as the resident detective/advisor, Yagami must infiltrate various after-school clubs, gain the trust of the student body, and resolve the conflicts at hand. Each club brings a different minigame, such as the dance club's rhythm mechanics, robotics club's strategy gameplay, and boxing's arcade-style combat. There's definitely a lot of fun to be had here, and I found myself dipping back into the school stories frequently during my playthrough. However, I think it's important to note that more doesn't always translate to better, and Lost Judgment may even have too much. Aside from the skateboard and some of the school stories, I found most of the new additions to be relatively uninspired. This often led to the game feeling bloated in that Assassin's Creed kind of way, which is a point I touched on in my review of the previous Judgment. I think Lost Judgment is at its best when it follows the established path, beating up delinquents and gangsters in the streets of Japan. And while there's plenty of crunchy action, it occasionally becomes derailed by its superfluous additions. But there are more pros than cons. I dove headfirst into the school stories and beat all of them, including the DLC stories, and I'll never grow tired of smacking up goons across Kamurocho and Ijincho. So taking everything into account, where does that leave Lost Judgment in the Yakuza series hierarchy? For me, I think I enjoyed it a little bit less than the first Judgment. The second game has a lot more stuff, but it's a little too distracting at times. That being said, I still enjoyed it, and I'm hoping against all odds that we get a sequel, one that doesn't discard our famous face detective. Lost Judgment on PlayStation 5 earns a 7 out of 10. 見てくれてありがとうございます。こちらのチャンネル購読お願いします。皆さん、ごきげんよう。さようなら。